Record. Okay, good morning, everybody. I've got Nancy here. I'm going to read a little bio for her, and then she's going to take us on a journey north. So thanks, Nancy, for being here, and thank you, everybody, for attending. I have this recording, so it'll be on YouTube if you want to watch later or share with others. So Nancy is the Journey North Program Coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Arboretum, and she has worked at the intersection of science and community outreach for more than 3 decades. So she believes in the collective power of individuals working together to create change for the good, and to this day, she remains passionate about volunteerism, citizen science, and participatory research. Before assuming her leadership position with Journey North in 2018, Ms. Sheehan managed a citizen-based water quality monitoring program with over 200 volunteers for the Rock River Coalition, a nonprofit in southeastern Wisconsin. And so Ms. Sheehan also worked with area school district administrators to secure funding for and design various youth-centered citizen science projects. After receiving her master's from the Yale School of the Environment, Ms. Sheehan served as a forestry extension volunteer with the Peace Corps in Gambia. She then pursued graduate studies at the UW-Madison Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and led teams conducting participatory land tenure research in West Africa. As a certified canoe instructor and outdoor adventure educator, Ms. Sheehan can often be found kayaking the rivers and backpacking the trails of Wisconsin with family and friends, which I know we all can attest to and relate. And she is a native of Washington, D.C., and Ms. Sheehan has lived in Madison for 25 years. So thank you so much for coming to talk about Journey North, and I'll let you take over the screen.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, and I wish I were more frequently out there in that kayak and canoe
Right.
than I am right now. I find myself behind the screen a lot. So thanks for the introduction, and thanks everybody for joining. I see a few familiar names there. Looking forward to giving the presentation, but also really looking forward to spending some time chatting about Journey North and how you all might engage. So let me see here. I'm going to share my screen. So can you all see the screen?
Take it away.
Yes, great. So after that great introduction, I won't go too much into it, but I'm Nancy Sheehan. I do go by the pronouns she, her, hers. And as Jamie mentioned, I'm with the Journey North. I'm the program coordinator at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Arboretum. I thought today I'll talk a little bit about what the mission of Journey North is, our monitoring approach, and some key program features. So here's a wonderful aerial view of the visitor centers at the Arboretum, which is this great jewel of an open arboretum in the center of Madison. Journey North, I'll just say at the outset, is a crowd-sourced participatory science program, meaning that we're open to everybody and anybody to participate in this participatory science program. Like many participatory science programs, they have like a dual mission, both education and outreach and the collection of actionable research. So Journey North's mission is really to ignite interest in migratory species. We're committed to sharing that story of migration to kind of get people interested, even to let them know that this wonderful thing is happening right above their, in the skies above their head. But we're also really committed to, and our volunteers are committed to contributing to the science of migration. So quickly going through some of the elements, the key elements of our monitoring approach. So Journey North really kind of prides itself on being accessible to many people. So we do that in the way we have chosen the species that we are asking our volunteers to help us monitor. So the species, as you'll see, are easy to recognize by the vast majority of people. Journey North is continental in scope with a long history, and we're focused really on the timing of phenological events rather than the phenophases throughout the whole annual life cycle of migratory species. So here's our splash of color of all the wonderful species that Journey North has under its umbrella. Hummingbirds, monarchs and milkweed, orioles, red-winged blackbirds, common loons, ice-off and ice-on-dates, the American robin, barn swallows, bald eagles. So those are our main species that Journey North volunteers help us track. We do have two more education-focused programs. One is the Tulip Test Garden, and the other is the Symbolic Migration Project. And I'll just quickly give you a quick overview here. So the Tulip Test Garden targets mainly K-13 educators to introduce the concept of phenology. It's kind of one of those things that it's hard to kind of get a handle on, especially at a young age. So teachers work with their students to plant bulbs in the fall. They then talk about phenology, day length, predict when the bloom, emergence and bloom of those tulips will be. And then they also submit when those actual bloom, emergence and bloom dates are. So that's a popular project for our educators. The Symbolic Migration Project is a collaborative project with the Monarchs Across Georgia, which is a committee of the Environmental Alliance of Georgia. A lot of words there, but it's basically ambassador programs that, again, for mainly K-12 education settings, nature centers, homeschoolers are involved in this, where students create ambassador butterflies, which paper butterflies that then are sent to mail to an environmental educator in central Mexico, and then distributed amongst schools that surround the monarch biosphere reserve in central Mexico. So it's a way of connecting students as a way that are the real life monarchs connect us all across international boundaries and borders. So it's a great program, and we really are indebted to the Monarchs Across Georgia for helping to run that project. So again, back to kind of the key feature. So Journey North is continental in scope. So this is just a quick visualization. You can see the vast majority of our volunteers hail from the United States, but we have a good representation across Canada. The color scheme is just a little off, I'm just noticing right now. And also Mexico, the Caribbean, Latin America, and the kind of the tip of South America. We're always looking to increase because, of course, with a crowdsourced program, you need a crowd, so more people need to be involved. But we are proud of the volunteers who have participated since 1993. And I will mention that Journey North has been around since 93, with the dawn of the internet, if you can believe that that was ever a time when that was. I dated myself in that intro, so you know that I was around beforehand. But really, it's that continuity of collecting data that allows Journey North to have such a great treasure trove of migration data to contribute to the science of migration. So a really proud feature for Journey North. On average, I will say we receive about 45,000 observation reports per year. Our best year was during the pandemic. You'll see that figure of 63,000. It was a silver lining for us, the pandemic, that we had so many people receptive to being outdoors and being watchful and observant of the natural world around them. So we really had a great year. But on average, it's 45,000. And Jamie, you're monitoring the chat. I'm also happy to take questions, but I'll kind
Yep.
of move through if people just put their questions down, and I'll kind of
Yep.
get to questions at the end. Now, the focus on the phenological events, I thought that I would run through our two largest projects, which is the Hummingbird Project and the Monarch Migration and Milkweed Phenology Project. Again, the emphasis to emphasize here are really about the timing of observable events in the annual life cycle of the species that we follow. Our data has been used for presence and absence analysis, not necessarily for population density. So for the hummingbird, we cover all 8 species of migratory hummingbirds. In this area, it's ruby-throated and rufous that are our main focus. We are seeing a lot of vagrant, if we could call them that even, occurrences of some other species that are showing up in places where they were not expected. So again, it's a feature, this great feature of being this crowdsourced project that is everywhere, hopefully everywhere all the time, that will pick up more of these special occurrences. During the spring, again, it's just getting people primed soon for the spring arrival of hummingbirds. So we ask people to let us know the date of those first arrivals. We also ask, oftentimes, hummingbirds especially show up at feeders. So we ask people to let us know when their feeders, when they put their feeders up. Sometimes people leave them up all winter long, but we want to know that information. We also want people to let us know what plants hummingbirds are nectaring from. So again, trying to get a little bit of behavior along with event-based observations. Spring, summer, we focus more, or have our volunteers focus more on behaviors, defending territory, onset of mating and nesting. But again, always asking where are they seeing hummingbirds feeding, what plants are important to hummingbirds, what species. And then as we move into fall and winter, it's a little trickier, in part because the identification of female and juvenile hummingbirds is harder for some. So we ask, as we move into the fall, to have our volunteers focus on sightings of male hummingbirds. Many people actually know their own hummingbirds in their backyards, especially at their feeders. They will name them. They know them really well. And they will know when a fall male hummingbird arrives at their feeder with their resident hummingbird. So again, our volunteers are we consider them experts for their own locale, and this is a way to kind of get a sense of the onset of fall migration when these new migrating males show up at backyard feeders or in backyard gardens. So that's hummingbirds. I'll shift to monarchs and milkweed. Lots of new things coming out about monarchs and milkweed. I was just saying to Jamie that population numbers, if those of you who follow monarchs are aware, there has been a significant decline of our numbers of monarchs in the Monarch Biosphere Reserve, the overwintering site in Mexico. So we're really concerned about monarchs, but it's across the board. We're concerned about all migrating species. So Monarch and Milkweed Project, again in the spring, we prime people very shortly that monarchs will start leaving their overwintering sites along the coastal California and central Mexico, and let people know when, let us know when the first monarchs arrive to their location. First egg, first larva, first chrysalis, and also when milkweed first emerge. So again, we're trying to, with the Monarch and Milkweed Project especially, get at this sense of the phenological mismatch. Once monarchs leave their overwintering sites, milkweed needs to be available for monarchs to lay their eggs upon, especially in places like Texas along the Gulf Coast there. If there is no milkweed or if there's a big freeze at that period of time, that generation of milkweed will not be able to reproduce. And so we're trying to get our volunteers, ask our volunteers to submit the dates of when there's milkweed is emerging and just where milkweed is across the landscape, especially in the spring. Now, first spring sightings of monarchs can happen very early in places like Texas, along the Gulf Coast, and into the interior of California, Arizona. But here in Wisconsin, we may not see our first arrival of monarchs until April or even May. Sometimes in Canada, not even June. So we keep that asking that question, that first arrival, up until quite later, that we consider more summer. So these questions still remain the same. So when are the first eggs, first larva, first chrysalis, first monarch, but also after your first, where are you seeing monarchs across the landscape? Where are you seeing evidence of breeding? And then again, where are you seeing milkweed? And what plants, what flowers are you seeing monarchs nectaring upon? And the similar questions kind of moving into the fall. And especially in the fall, we're really interested in hearing from our volunteers on what nectaring plants are important to monarchs. So that's a big emphasis in the fall. But in addition, we have a couple other pieces of information we ask our volunteers to report upon in the fall. So monarchs are insects. They migrate during the day and then they collect in clusters at night. So we're really interested in where monarch roosts or clusters are appearing across the landscape during fall migration. So for all you forestry folks out there, we love to hear not only date and location of these roosts, but what tree species or shrub species monarchs roost upon, what kind of the neighboring habitat is in terms of, are there water resources? Are there nectaring resources? What is the landscape looking like around these roost sites? We're also interested in peak migration events. So monarchs in the spring are more singly moving across the landscape as they migrate north during the spring. But as they move south during the fall, they often are in greater numbers, sometimes 10, but sometimes in the hundreds. So those are peak migration events that we want to know about. This is just a quick visualization of monarch roosts. This is sightings of roosts across North America as monarchs make their way south to Mexico. We need to do a better job out west to track monarch roosts. But as you can see there, it's kind of funneling through the central flyway and along the East Coast down to Mexico. And again, trying to key in on the forestry people who might be among us, because Jamie said I could expect a number of people, of participants coming from the forestry management sector. We did do a big news update about monarch fall roosts and monitoring fall roosts in December. So that's a quick link that you all have available on the PowerPoint. And then in the winter, I'll just mention quickly that we have a targeted effort going on with our partners, including the Georgia DNR, to track the presence of monarchs, monarch roosts, and perhaps evidence of breeding monarchs along the Gulf states. So Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, sure I'm missing people, up a state, Florida, up into South Carolina and North Carolina, because there's evidence that not all monarchs are completing the migration to central Mexico. So we want people to report the presence of monarchs along the Gulf states and up into North Carolina. I'll just run quickly. I should have put my watch out here. We're doing okay on the time, yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
you're doing great.
okay, okay. So again, Journey North prides itself on being welcoming, trying to be welcoming to as many people as possible, that crowd. So we have a easy registration and reporting system. We really provide many ways to tell the migration story, and we have open access, a commitment to open access to the data. So, to register, all it takes is to enter your name and address, set a password, and at that point you can subscribe to our newsletter. This is a quick snapshot of what our reporting form looks like. You can see we have a location picker here. You put you could enter this street address or the Latin along also. So location is really is number one required field. The date, of course, is a required field. The number of species that you see at any one time is a required field. You're given the option to upload a photo. I will say photos are really important as a voucher for the sighting. We don't require it because we know how hard it is to capture, for example, a hummingbird. It's a very fleeting image, but it really is important to get that photo submitted. And we love comments. If you can provide context, it's just very rich information. I will say, this is a little bit of a sneak peek. I have been working for the last several years now in creating a new reporting application that will be mobile friendly. Our previous form is only available online on your desktop, really. So this is a sneak peek. I will not give you a date, but I'm really hoping to push this out this summer after the spring migration. So again, trying to be as easy as possible to allow people to just submit quickly, and it will be mobile friendly. So that's just a sneak peek. More, stay tuned. Uh, we again telling the migration story. I will say that I am the only staff member of Journey North. I produce about 150 newsletters annually. We have a large subscriber list and a huge following on social media. And at this point, I will say that I'm always looking for guest writers. So if you or anyone it would be interested perhaps in helping kind of highlight migration or how weather impacts migration of any of the species that we follow, or songbirds, raptors in general, please let me know. I'm always looking for guest writers. We also tell the story by interactive maps. There are about 40 interactive maps on our website that display the data submitted by volunteers in real time. This is just a quick GIF of what one sees. You could have like a front row seat of migration of the ruby throat. This is from 2022, kind of unfolding on these interactive maps.
That's cool.
Yeah. Um, we have a place on the website where you can view either your own sightings or view all the data for a particular species. It comes in this table format. Again, this will slightly change in the future, but basically the basic intent is that we want to share information while protecting privacy. So as you can see here, it's to 1 digit or 2 digits that we share out to the general public. Our interactive maps allow you to look at reports. This is just if you key in on any one of those location pins, up pops the report submitted by the volunteer. This is of Rufus male, was kind of our star of the show in 2022. It overwintered in New York. I mean, unbelievably so. So anyway, this is one of these special cases that just show up.
Nancy, I was curious. I saw this earlier. Did they name this Columbus? Is that his name?
Yes, yes, yes.
Very cool.
So that's, you know, um, we may smile at that, but again, I think building this is part of telling this migration story and giving people an entree into getting to know different, just being more aware of what's in their backyard or at a public location, um, that they build up a personal rapport and understanding and love for these species. And so that, is a real benefit of any participating in a participatory science program that, you kind of end up falling in love with the species that you track. So it's a great outcome, and I love sharing these comments and stories. Um, I will also mention for the researchers out there, over the last couple of years, I have been cleaning and prepping the data. We have all 9 data packages for all 9 of the major projects of Journey North, now published to a central data repository called the Environmental Data Initiative, which is part of Data One. I really have put an emphasis on meaning fair data management principles. So these data packages include metadata documentation, citing, uh, um, information on how you can download using R and Python. So really machine, interoperable um, by data processing packages. And that's the portal. There's the link to the portal on EDI for these data packages. This might be my last one. Yeah. So again, I'm just here to maybe encourage you to promote Journey North amongst your network. You can join us, register and submit your own sightings, or become perhaps a guest writer. Really looking for collaborators on analysis of the data also, because that's a commitment as a program manager of a participatory science program. Part of my job is to make sure that the data is used for informing land management and is used in different scientific research ongoing. So I'm really very much interested in collaboration.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. And in regards to the data, Brad Hutnick had a question on, do you put together, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'll have you answer it. Is the eBird data incorporated? So like the Orioles and the hummingbirds, do you ever get any eBird data or is it just Journey North data?
So on occasion, and this has been occasionally, so I do work with some partners to import data. So for example, Loon Watch in northern Wisconsin, which is part of Northfield College, has they have shared their first arrival of common loons with Journey North, and we import that data. Um, the Hawkwatch Migration Association, I may get that acronym incorrect. At some of their Hawkwatch stations across North America, they're also tracking fall migrating monarchs. So we're in the process of importing that data into Journey North. We do not have any kind of agreement with right now INAT or eBird. In our future citing application, we will ask the question if people have submitted their citing on to another participatory science program. So at least researchers will know that this potentially could be a double count. But yeah, I will add that I think eBird and Journey North have perhaps slightly different audiences, although more research on that could happen. But I have a sense that eBird is really targets more the kind of more professional birders out there, and Journey North is really attracts more of the crowd in the backyard, bird observers, and gardeners, and landscapers, that kind of thing. Anyway,
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, anybody can be a birder or a monarch watcher.
yeah.
Great question, Brad. I had a question on how did Journey North pick their species? And I know they're probably because they're recognizable, but is there any other
Great
criteria?
question.
Hmm.
Yeah, great question. Um, so this is one of these places where collaboration I would really welcome. So Journey North was a nonprofit for many years. It was acquired by the UW-Madison Arboretum in 2018. At that point, I think there were 39 project species, and I've culled them greatly. So what you are seeing today is somewhat of an inherited project, yeah, program, right? So I really tried to uh, select project species that, again, are easily recognized, that have had quite a number of sightings over the years. So the monarch and the hummingbird projects are both, who've had hundreds of reports over the years. Um, I'm still trying to think about priority species moving forward. I think, again, the American robin is a harbinger of spring. It's kind of your gateway. I don't like, I'm always trying to think of a different way to say this, gateway drug, but it's like people love American robins. It does, even though not all of them migrate, it really kind of brings people a sense of awareness that's, these are seasonal changes, and our avian friends follow a different calendar than we may. But, are there other species that we should include? Absolutely. I look forward to collaborating with people to figure that out moving forward. We're in a good place now, I think, to say that we can accept and change our species menu.
Yeah, that's great. I think, I always think for robins, it's like three snows on a robin's back. Even though I live in La Crosse and they're here on the Mississippi all year round. So,
Yeah,
um,
they're tricky.
yeah, and I think, there might be a few people from Wisconsin here. So I'm kind of just thinking of Wisconsin in general, but like Michigan has the Forestry for Michigan Birds, and like Minnesota is coming out with their Forestry for Minnesota Birds initiative. So like I wonder if there's a way that we could collaborate with those priority species because those initiatives are a little more forestry focused, but they're also like picking birds that are in decline or species of concern. And it might be a good way to like overlap the two, but
Yeah,
I'm just thinking out
absolutely,
loud.
absolutely. And having a real in-depth conversation about that would be very helpful
Hmm.
at this point in time. Again, some of the things to think about is access to where
Hmm.
these bird species might, on the majority, be seen.
Yeah.
Um, I will say that if you look at our maps, you'll see gaps. I would say that we have an urban bias.
Hmm.
We're most of the sightings come in from where most of the people live. So that would be something to grapple with in these discussions moving forward. But I would very much appreciate having those discussions.
Absolutely. Does anybody else have some questions? I have a list and I can keep going, but I just want to let anybody else step up and ask a question if they're interested.
I guess I would have a prompt perhaps for you all. I don't know where everybody's coming from, but uh, stories of how information and data from Journey North or eBird or iNet, how it has been used um, in a land management context. I'd love to be able to tell that. I would love to learn more about that and be able to tell that story to, for example, Journey North volunteers, because I think, these are people who really want to make a difference and feel that they're contributing. So, it's part of my job to kind of connect the dots, and that's something that I love to be able to do more in the future. So I'm just wondering, if your cohort of folks out there would have a comment on that. Quiet crowd
Hmm.
on a Wednesday.
I know the Breeding Bird Atlas was used for like the 3 billion birds lost, but I think the Breeding Bird Atlas is a little more scientific based than like eBird. Um, but yeah, I don't know anybody out there using eBird for any land management practices or know of anybody that uses it.
How many people have actually heard of Journey North? I know Jennifer has. She's the only person I know on this call, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of new people on Journey North.
Yeah,
I think that's the fun thing about it is it's, used by a wider crowd, but it's giving database information. I mean, I started with it because I'm a hummingbird person, and there's kind of only two websites that did a lot of hummingbird tracking for when can you expect them. As a gardener and a bird person, that was a really important thing to know when they started to come around. And I think it's something that captures people's imaginations. So if you're looking for that crowdsourced information, I would hope it can be invaluable. And I think that's why the Arboretum purchased it, is that it's this database that's there. It was being used a lot for educational purposes, which is the other way that we used it a lot, in volunteer efforts with monarch migration and things like that. It gets people engaged. And, for most of us, that's always the first step towards how do we expand this? How do we get more people involved in this network? Is that it made it fun. Even if you think you know things about a species, it's always telling you something new. And it works at all levels. So what we found, as I've talked to people, we do a volunteer garden at the Milwaukee County Zoo and a couple of other things where we do educational efforts, is that it's something that parents and kids can work with together. It's something that teachers could use, but at the same time, it's giving you all this information. So I think, that's been Nancy's struggle is, how do you get that to the people who need the information, and how do you get more scientific contributions? People who do it on a consistent basis, which the public doesn't necessarily do, you know.
right.
Um, but I think especially for things like monarch roosts, the people who care are know of it and are trying to record that data. So hopefully it can be useful.
Yeah. Yeah, monarch roosts. I have communicated with folks. Now I'm not going to remember exactly. It's in Wisconsin, but they had started monitoring the monarch roosts in the fall. And then there was a projected land development in this one park. And they were going to cut down these particular trees that were important to the monarchs during the fall. And they created this little advocacy group to, say, how can we preserve these trees? But they would not. I mean, the people who maybe were in charge of this change weren't there in the fall, didn't know the monarchs were there in the fall. So, it's creating an opportunity for these species to be seen by the many and people who are making management decisions during different seasons when, for example, the monarchs are not roosting. So, yeah.
And that's maybe, thinking about how that can be applied to certain bird situations, if there are opportunities for that. Not that you want to tailor make everything. I know, Nancy, you got more than enough to do. But, there may be similar situations if we really think about it where it could be really important or it could have that broader applicability too. Something
Mhm.
that people would notice that we really, want or need that information.
So like species, seed mix, I'm wondering if anybody has had any experience on that. So knowing, what are the priority plants for hummingbirds in different regions, some of that information is known, but how could we use that data coming in from Journey North in a way that would inform seed mixes? There's some effort to do that with monarchs.
I think it's fascinating too. What I learned today is the emergence of the milkweed is very similar to some of the work that bird researchers are like aerial insectivores and like the emergence of the bugs. And when
Mm,
the migratory birds arrive is starting to be, they don't align. And I think that's a big, they don't know the exact reasons for that, but I think climate change is a big discussion for why that's happening. Like the insects are emerging sooner before the birds get here. And then when they arrive, there's no food, there's no buffet for them.
right.
So I think that's a really fascinating part of Journey North is that you're tracking the emergence of the milkweed and when the monarchs arrive, because that is really critical. That's their food.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think
exactly.
that's really cool. And if I was a scientist, I'd want to look at that data and see kind of if there is like a gap between the arrival and the emergence of their
Yeah.
food.
I will say on the new sightings app, we're asking a few more questions that to get at this phenological matchup. And it might be a big ask for some of our volunteers. For example, if they see a hummingbird feeding on an insect, because it's so quick. And, but there are some folks who do that already and they provide that information in a comment field, which is text-based, hard to assess. So we're now having different fields where our volunteers can provide that information across the board for all our avian projects.
That's
If they
great.
do see the feeding on an insect and to let us know what insect, if
Hmm.
if they know. Well, so we'll see.
We've had a couple comments. Colleen from Forest Stewards Guild she thinks it would be interesting to use or document as a tool along with timing of leaf expansion and flowering of
Mm,
certain trees. And she's like, I hear the timing of recent has been a little off. So yeah, it's definitely something happening across the country. And it's also fascinating to see like that Rufus hummingbird
Rufus
Rufus, he's overwintering,
in New
in
York.
December in New York, right? So it's like, is that normal behavior? I wouldn't know in New York, but not in
So,
Wisconsin. So yeah,
yeah.
very, very interesting. And then Kathy Wendling says our membership would be interested in the Journey North program, Friends of the North Pikes Creek Wetlands.
Ah, great,
So she'll
great.
contact you.
Yeah, Kathy,
But
contact me. And do you have can I put my email here?
yeah, I can copy it
Um,
into the chat for everybody
okay,
since I have it
just reach
open.
out and then on the leaf out, I do know that some researchers have like used green updates and kind of combine that with migration timing.
Hmm.
So that's definitely something that would be interesting. I think what Colleen was mentioning.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and Journey North did for a time have a leaf out project. Um, but again, that's one of these discussions I would love to have with a group of experts. Like how can we ask that question in a way that the many could answer and be impactful data coming in? So
Hmm.
yeah, great question. Um, let's see.
Claire,
So
can you see Claire's chat? Can you see the chat now?
yeah, so it says excited to learn more about it. Journey North. I work for Land Trust, and we've been trying to incorporate eBird data into some of our land project prioritization tools using GIS. Set radius around our managed lands to look at INAC data. Um, we try to get the community involved. Yeah, BioBlitz. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Claire, please reach out. We do a big bio blitz in the middle of the summer also. So, we could do more of those if there are partners and collaborators that focus on different species. The bio blitz is international, trinational monarch monitoring blitz.
Mhm.
So monarchs are getting a lot of attention right now.
Yeah. Well, they're, you know, a critical species for the ecosystem, and we're just seeing all these different
Yeah,
things in certain species, and it's kind of a warning
they
sign.
just have they have a really great following, the monarchs do.
Yes.
So in
Yes.
a way that I haven't quite found, but maybe with the hummingbirds, yes. Um, Less so with the other bird species, but maybe I just don't know. So that's why it's so great to be able to meet you all.
Nancy, I had a question about the events. Are they like timed? So like your spring monarch event, is it like from May to, or March to May, or are they like, do they go along the whole summer? Like, are they
Great
connected?
question. Great question. And something I will say that I find a little challenging to conceptualize. So there are really just two seasons for Journey North. There's spring and there's fall. So
Mhm.
we have in the past, it'll be slightly different in the future, but we consider spring anytime between January and the 1st of August. Again, if you take a species like the monarch, people in Canada may see their first monarch arrival in May and June. So having a cutoff, just didn't work for especially the monarch. And then having program programmed timed time period for spring seems somewhat ill-advised in the sense that things are changing because of climate change. So what we may have considered to be like the period, the onset of spring and the end of spring may actually be changing. And the same for the other seasons. So we try to keep the broad right now, but there is some in our way of coding and display of our maps. We do have these big batch, like spring is January to August. And then winter is the other period.
Hmm.
But it's an interesting question. It's definitely an interesting question. And it comes also with how we vet the data. So if you do actually see if we do get a report coming in for a first arrival, for example, of a red-winged blackbird in June or July, we may actually reach out to that particular volunteer and ask them to kind of provide a little more verification of their sightings. Like, is this really your first one
Gotcha. It's like a
in the
quality
spring?
control.
Yeah.
Hmm. Cool. That's good.
Um, yeah, and I'd be interested to hear Claire and her use of INAT data, how she actually works with that. It's I have toyed with the idea of creating a Journey North INAT project. Then we have API that shares the data across um, our platform. Journey North does have its own server, dedicated server space on UW's shared host server. So we're really careful about the data that we collect and import, and we're really cognizant of privacy issues. And um, anyway, it's an interesting question to discuss more. I do think that Journey North, and maybe Jennifer has a comment here, has somewhat of a loyal following, even though we are crowdsourced, so we have those one-off people submitting reports, but we do have a great cohort of volunteers who year after year um, submit observational reports. So I don't know about the Journey iNaturalist audience in that regard. It's very easy to use, absolutely. But are you going to get that rich, kind of deep, more information, more data that one could ask of our Journey North volunteers.
Yeah, I think, for my personal understanding, and people I talk to, it's a bit of a different crowd. And, most people come into iNaturalist through a project, whether it's because they do a bio blitz or during COVID, like one of our local nature centers was doing a backyard naturalist where once a month, they would have you go out and photograph things in your yard and submit it as a project. Because I don't know, I think the it's growing, in a large sense by leaps and bounds in terms of people who are naturalists or who are volunteer naturalists because it can help with that ID and it has a wider range. But I think you're right, Journey North has people who are dedicated to doing that because it's fun and it's easy. And you just load up your picture and you can find yourself on the map. I mean, I think those are really fun things for people as they're just getting into nature and as they're finding their species of interest. So I think it always just depends too on how interesting they find that particular information and that bird or that insect. Um, but I think it's a lot more interactive for most people. I know a lot more people who just use iNaturalist to identify something in the field and they never actually submit the information to.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
especially if they're going through Seek. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And iNaturalist is, I mean, very well funded too. So, I try not to think of competing with the big
no, I think
birds.
it's two different things. Yeah.
Two
And
different
different,
things.
yeah. Yeah.
And I will say that I do take seriously, so the field of citizen science has like 10 principles, and one of which is, open science, share, but also providing feedback to our volunteers. So, I take that very seriously as like, our stories of migration are not just for information, but they also we use a lot of the comments and photos of our volunteers, and it's a way of kind of a return of results to show that they're exciting and their comments matter. So they're part of telling the story. Also, it's not just like a peer-reviewed research paper. So I take that very seriously. Thanks, Jennifer.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to get a different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find, projects like eBird or Journey North are just like a stepping stone. And I love your question, Nancy, about like how people are potentially using like eBird or Journey North to start answering those like science questions, or at least just like getting that um that warning of like, oh, there's a decline in monarchs, like what is happening? What, you know, this is the warmest winter we've probably had in for a long
Yeah.
time. Like, is there a relation to that? And we can kind of pinpoint this data for a scientist to go further, right? Like it's
Right.
yeah, and it's a
Right.
great outreach aspect. I was just showing my son, who's 3, your slides, and he's like, a loon, like, like it's cute to see the kids as well get into the
Yeah.
species.
Absolutely. They're the
Yeah.
next generation of stewards, right?
Yes, right.
So I'm
So it's a
always
great outreach
great. Thank
for the
you.
kids. But yeah, anybody else have any burning questions as we're getting close to the end of the hour here? Or
And
thoughts?
again, please reach out. And yeah, I would love to connect. And,
Hmm.
if there's some way to carry on the conversation, as you were mentioning, Jamie,
Hmm.
um, to add more species to Journey North and how we do that, I'd be really interested in that
Yeah,
conversation.
absolutely. And I think, I could definitely poke some people for guest authors as well
Yes.
to kind of
Love it.
expand your horizon there. But thank you so much for
Great.
presenting and giving us a good perspective of Journey North. I know it's not Northern Forest related, but those species are very important for our ecosystem. So I think it's all just encompassing, as
Yes.
well as like as a citizen science project and getting
Great.
that
Well, thank you
passion.
everyone for taking the
Yes.
time.
Thank you. I will send
Thanks,
out an,
Jamie.
yep, I'll send out an email with some of your links and your contact info as well.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good
Have a
day.
good day. Bye.